every business needs to think about how it's going to get its people to its places of work, how it's going to get to its customer sites, and how people are going to enable their mobility in the future. It's really just changed the landscape for everything, and people need to think about it in a really holistic way.
Okay. And Tom, vehicle recycling, and maybe people want to think about insurance companies, but you work very closely with fleets. And how does, keeping vehicles on the road for fleets, how do you help this happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned before, really proud that we work with Zenith, another net zero business like ourselves, put sustainability at the heart of the strategy. And fundamentally, it's about uptime, maximising uptime, so and minimising downtime, which clearly the flip side of the same coin. But if that vehicle is off the road, it's either not earning and or it's costing. So our job is really to make sure that for our clients, that time is completely minimised, typically through the provision of green parts, short supply chain, onshore, OE standard, warranted, ready for same or next day delivery to make sure those vehicles can get back on the road as quickly as possible and either save cost of alternative mobility provision or enhance revenue through increased uptime. Okay,
and what I want to know is, as you're encouraging businesses to adopt electric vehicles, are you seeing this in just in sort of the cars, should we say, or is there what about sort of vans and other type of vehicles? Is there is it 50-50 or?
Certainly not. I mean, really different paces in the transition. Right. So in 5 years, we've gone from about 1% of our cars being electric to 47%.
Wow.
But vans, we're up at 6%. So really material difference.
And the van market, do you think?
Well, the van market's just not ready. The technology's not there. You don't get the payload, you don't get the range. So if you think about, I'm driving to the office, I can charge at home. I'm only doing a few hundred miles a week. Versus a van that is the workhorse of your business. It has to be available, maybe it needs to be on call. Where's your dwell time going to be? How many people can charge at home? How are you going to pay for that? The challenges are quite different.
How are you sort of having that balance so that they are still being able to make a profit, that having this transition isn't costing them too much?
So we go back to the data to look at which are the optimum vehicles to change now.
Yeah.
Every fleet's on a renewal cycle, could be 5 years to renew that fleet. So you don't need to do everything right now. That's not the plan. What you want is a staged transition that you manage through. You need to look at your employees. Where can they charge? Do they have off-street parking? The VAT rate and things like that on energy is different. So if you think about charging at home, pay 5% VAT, charging in the public network, 20% VAT.
Yeah.
So it impacts everyone. So you can't just say to people, I'm going to lump you all together. So you go back to the data and you model it through to look at what your optimum opportunity is. And then you're mapping that out through to 2035 in some cases. Some businesses, and a lot of businesses to be fair, have stuck with their transition decarbonisation plans despite the change in phase out of ICE from 2030 to 2035.
Right, that's interesting.
And it is. And I think they've done that because fleet's part of their decarbonisation plan. It might be the biggest part for lots of customers, but it's still only part of it. And people don't want to row back from these commitments because it's really important for their investors. It's really important for their stakeholders.
As well, actually, though, I have to say.
Yeah, because you want to do the right thing, right? And your employees want you to do the right thing, and your customers want you to do the right thing. And just saying, well, the rules have changed, so I'll chuck it all in the bin, I think is a really, it's not something we've seen, and I'm really glad that we haven't.
Yeah, me too.
So where do you see the future going, as people start to understand this a bit better? There's going to be maybe some incentives from VET. I don't want to put sort of where are you going to be in 5 years, but do you think it's going to get easier for you to see this transition? Not easier, but you're going to see more uptake as things get a bit clearer, maybe?
We're going to see more uptake because the supply side has been regulated by the government. So we've got the ZEV mandate in place, locked in, and the fines are pretty hefty there for the vehicle manufacturers. So the supply side is locked in. The challenge is demand side. So, as I said, for us, we're at 47% on electric cars, our proportion for our fleet. But fleet accounts for 4 in 5 new BEVs that are bought.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So the retail market's way behind. Why? Well, where are the incentives? The grants have gone. The van grant goes at the end of next year. The workplace charging grant goes at next year. You've got that VAT disparity we spoke about. So you've got to look really hard at total cost of ownership. And it's just really difficult for the average consumer. It's a lot better for the company car driver because the benefit in kind tax is there. But for the corporate, again, you've got to look at your whole spread and say, how's this going to impact my productivity? How am I going to run the shifts when I've got people double manning a van and it goes from one person to the next? They've got to be on call. When are they going to charge it? There's all these other challenges. So, our business ran. We had suppliers, we had customers, and we looked after our assets and we paid them to do certain services. Yeah. And now we're saying, okay, if I share data with you, can you optimize my business by helping me remarket this asset in the right way? So you're having to give away some level of control to your supplier. So you need to work with people that you can trust and know that you've got the same values and that they're going to do the right thing, because you're thinking, what's the environmental impact of this? What happens if it all goes a bit wrong? And suddenly you're in the press saying, well, do you know what, they didn't do the right thing, they dumped a load of products somewhere. And
that's very negative. Once you hear that, it's one step forward, two steps back sometimes when that happens.
It's trusted partnership, so it's really good upfront diligence. Who are you partnering with? Proud to partner with Zenith. Zenith happy to partner with SYNETIQ. So you do your homework, check on values, alignment, process, integrity, rigour, compliance. You can't cut any corners with that, absolutely not. But then beyond that, I think genuinely there is a way that all those different stakeholders that we've been talking about can win, because OEs win if there's greater adoption.
Correct.
The environment wins if there's greater adoption. The consumer should win if there is a high degree of supply, but then a good degree of demand further downstream. And again, genuinely, the planet will win if things that can be reused are, and things that can be recycled are, but we don't mix up one for the other, and we actually make sure these assets, whether it be cars, vehicles, batteries, motors, parts, are in the right place.
So there's a simplicity there, as you just alluded to earlier.
Yeah, I said easy. I meant simple, actually.
Well,
there's an efficiency within it, but it's hugely complicated.
Exactly. I was going to say, where are the blocks?
Loads of industries. Yeah, really complicated. But when you break down what you're trying to achieve, actually that can be described relatively simply, as Tom sort of said there. So you say, well, this is what I want. And if you can align your values with like-minded businesses, then you can achieve it. When we very first met Tom, we talked about carbon literacy in your business. And we went away into our own business and said, you know what, we should do this. Why? Because we've got this plan about decarbonising. How do we turn that into actual values where people act upon it? So you've got to integrate this into your business properly and at a sort of fundamental level so that people actually think about sustainability when they're making decisions. It's not just about how much something costs, it's about how much it's going to cost over the next decade, because if you get yourself trapped into a narrow way of thinking, you will fall foul of that in a few years' time.